We are live. Welcome to the Positive Power Hour. I'm your host, Dan McBee, and I want to introduce a special co host we have today. This is Cheryl. Hey, Cheryl, say hi to
Hi.
the group.
Hello.
Cheryl is Luke's mom, and she is the one that has really kept the vision of Luke and Melinda's relationship moving forward and becoming the awesome family that they now are. And I always hold Cheryl in high esteem for how she never gave up that vision. And she's just always been there for them and the kids. She goes to all of their baseball games and every function that goes on. She is there. And I can also tell you that I've been to a number of their family functions, and it is just an amazing family. As Cheryl and I were talking before we started the meeting here tonight, the Facebook Power Hour, her family is like a melting pot of America. There's every kind of person you can imagine in the family. And it is just a warm, loving, kind, open minded, happy to share anything and everything. They just want to love and give love. And they're just an incredible group of people. And I've always felt honored being invited to one of their family functions. So that's the kind of family that they are. And I just think y'all should know that. All right. And Kimberlyn here says hi. Hello, Kimberlyn.
Hi,
Yeah, glad
Kimberlyn.
you're here. So I've got a couple of things I wanted to start off with tonight, Cheryl. And I mentioned to her that I know I repeat myself a lot, and sometimes I'll tell the same story maybe 4 or 5 times in a month or two. And that's kind of what I do. And it's also the idea of repetition. The more times we remember something that we forget, like forgetting to look at the positive things we do instead of focusing on all the bad things we've done or the mistakes that we make or, oh, darn, I did this and da, 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 and the beatings that we'll give ourselves. We want to focus on the positive things, right? And one of the things I talk about a lot on our broadcast is the fact that we never know who we're going to affect by the way we talk and the things we do with people, how we interact with them. If we're having a bad day, right, we might be a little out of sorts and maybe we don't pay attention to people the way we would normally do. And we don't realize that that might have been a moment, an opportunity that we might have had to make a difference in somebody's life, which is why, to me, developing the habit of staying in the moment is so important. Because when we're focusing all of our thoughts or a lot of our thoughts and feelings in the past or in the future, we're not in the moment. And we miss those opportunities that we have to do something special for somebody else, right? And I shared about how, and I know I've shared about how when I was growing up, I had absolutely no self-esteem, right? And when I say no self-esteem, I mean none. There, there was nothing I liked about myself. There was nothing I thought that I had to contribute to the world. I was scared of everybody and everything. And that's what I grew up in. I had ears that stuck out like Dumbo, in fact, and then I had polio and had the thick glasses. And because back in those days, in the 50s, they would, if you had polio and you had eye damage, they thought that if they could make the lens force the eye to pull in, that it would strengthen the muscle in the eye. I think all it really did was give me a headache, but that's okay. So those are the kinds of things I had to work through when I was growing, when I was on my growth journey, right? And when you have no self-esteem, the only person you're really thinking about is yourself, right? Because everything is about you. Man, that's the way most of us are when we're children anyway. It's all about us. And we hopefully outgrow that phase of our life as we go along. I know a lot of people that are much older than me that still haven't gotten that one, right? So it's not just a passage of time thing. It's about an evolvement, right? Evolving into somebody that quits thinking about just themselves and recognize that there is a whole world out there that could use some help. right? So as I'm starting to break out of this, self-imposed prison that I was in, that huddled mass of quiet desperation that Walt Whitman always talked about, I started to notice things about other people and would comment occasionally. But I was still so afraid that I might offend somebody. It was always about what I was doing, right? That and what they and how they might react to that. That made it real. It was a challenge to get past all of that and just share what I was feeling and what I was getting intuitively about people, right? Because I had worked hard on developing my intuitive sense. We all have one. It's just that for a lot of people, they get so wrapped up in their head that they don't get to hear God speaking, right?
Right.
So it can be developed. I think to a certain degree you have to have it naturally, but no matter what level you're at with your intuitive sense, you can expand it. It's like it's a muscle, right? You can make it grow. So I was doing that more and more as time went on. So years ago, I belonged to a group called CEO Space, and it was a club that you would join, and you would all get together like 4 times a year and share about your business and learn about different aspects of business and how to market and how to do books and just all of the different things that a business owner needs to have and know. And it was a heart-centered kind of thing. It wasn't all about, how can we make more money? Money is important. We all need it. And in fact, one of the leaders of the group used to stand in front of the group and say, so I want somebody to tell me why you're in business. And somebody raised their hand, I want to help heal cancer. And I want to help the lepers in Africa, and, all the different things that they would mention. And he would go through about 6 or 8 different people, and they'd all have the reason, what their passion was and where they wanted to put that passion at, right? And he would say, look, the reason you're in business is to make money. If you want to help charity, join a church, right? But be in business to make money, because if you don't make any money, you won't be in business. And he was right? So, the idea is to understand that you're going to make money through your passion, right? But you can't have one without the other, right? You can own a business and not have passion for it. I have a friend that's got a business that way, and it's really about making money. And that's okay. It's not his passion business. That's a money-making business, and that's okay. Passion businesses usually are owned by an individual, and they usually keep it until they die, or they extend it on to the family. But it's not usually the kind of thing money-making businesses usually started with the idea that at some point along the way, they'll sell it. And that's how they'll get their retirement money and walk off into the sunset and maybe start another business. Who knows, right? But they'll grow it to a certain level, and then they'll usually walk away from it. That's the difference between a money-oriented business and a passion business, okay? So most of these people were passion business people, and his thing was about teaching them to honor money as well. And it's one of the lessons I didn't learn well enough, obviously, right? That's okay. I keep working at it, and we'll see where it goes. But the point of all this story is that one of the gentlemen that I met in that group, and I think it went back all the way to like 2004 or 2006, somewhere around there. I met a gentleman there, and I've got a few things to read here, and please be patient here. In 2015, this gentleman wrote, Dan, years ago, you did a process on me at CEO Space that was very meditative to calm my mind. Do you still do that sort of work? And all this, exactly the work I do, right? And I remember that you were the first to tell me, other than myself, that I had a racing mind. And I didn't think much about it. That's the kind of thing I do. If I see something with somebody who's struggling, I'll kind of mention it and see if I can't help. And obviously, the balancing, it was a different product. It was that product I worked with in the beginning, right? But that's what happens is people lay down on the table. We put a series of these whispers on their body, and about an hour later, they get up feeling like Gumby. Right? There's just no stress or tension anywhere. The mind is nice and quiet and peaceful, and they have just an amazing experience, which is what this guy did when obviously 6 or 8 years after his experience, he still remembered that day. And that reminded me of why I started with that risk of sharing with people things I notice that I want to help them with, right? It's not about me. It's not about the money. It's not about any of those things. It's about, here's a person that's struggling and I can help them feel better, right? So that was in June 22nd, 2015, almost 10 years ago, right? Yeah, almost 10 years ago. Fast forward to today, the 28th. What was that? Thursday, something like that. I get a text from him. You may not remember, but you were one of the few who changed my life at CEO Space way back in 2006. So I was right. It was right in the time frame, 2006. I don't think I ever thanked you. Now, to give a little history, Stan is a very bright man. His passion is Qigong. For those of you that know what it is, you know what it is. And for those of you that don't, it's an ancient exercise process of movement that enables you to get back into center and focus, right? And so, just so you know, I don't think I ever thanked you. Now, Stan is going through some physical issues now. He's gotten cancer and he's going through cancer treatments. And I've been following his Facebook posts and I've reached out to him since this, and you'll see why in a few minutes here. But anyway, I don't think I ever thanked you. Well, obviously he did. He mentioned it back in 2015, right? But like I said, he's going through some things. Hi, Stan. I've followed you on Facebook for years now. Please tell me how I changed your life. I have also had cancer, so I have empathy for what you're going through. And that was my response back to him. He responded, you walked past me on your way into the dining hall. One of the great things about CEO Space was that we would all have breakout in these meetings throughout the day, and then we would meet for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And everybody would sit at different tables and meet different people. So you would expand the amount of people in your circle, which nowadays we call social media, right? But back in the old days where you actually did it physically, right? And it was a great way of gaining camaraderie. I don't know how many people made a lot of money because of what they learned at CEO Space. I think some did, but it was a learning thing. So you stopped you were on your way back into the dining. You were on your way into the dining hall, stopped, backed up, and said, your eyes are bouncing all over the place. I bet you also stutter. I was stunned as I had not spoken yet. You continued with, you're a very intelligent person who just has not learned to control your brain. When you speak, your mind is already 5 or 6 sentences down the road, and you're trying to catch up. You stumble trying to catch up. That hit home and emphasized my need to dig deeper into my Qigong practice. Now, as humbling as this text is to me, and as honored as I feel that he reached out to share this information, the first thought I had about it was, I've got to share this with our power group. Not for my benefit. I've already gotten the benefit just working with him, right? But the benefit is to understand that reaching out, taking that risk to reach out and comment to somebody that you see suffering or having a hard time, or who could use that arm around their shoulder, just to give them that embrace, to let them know that you recognize them as a human being. Just that simple of an act can change a person's life. Here was an event that happened in 2006. So that's how many years ago now? Almost 30 years, right? 06?
Oh, no, it's almost 20 years.
Oh, almost 20 years. Oh, well, I can't add either. But 20 years later, it still has resonated with him as a significant moment in his life, right? How many times do we walk past somebody, not even seeing? 17 years, that's probably
Yes.
Luke, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably.
17 years ago that I did something, and the way I phrased my response to him was that I'm honored that God worked through me to serve you. You and I are so blessed to have spent our lives doing what we love, to be of service. So that's such an amazing thing to me, that a simple little thing like noticing that he was struggling with his mind, right? And that I knew a way that could help him, altered his life for the rest of his life. We all have that ability to make that kind of difference. And quite often we do, just like Stan commenting, 15 years later, 10 years later, that he didn't know if he had thanked me or not for it, but it made that big a difference. I talked about my uncle, the priest, that was upset because he didn't know if the work he was doing made any difference, because he was a traveling priest, right? He'd go from site to site and give a sermon and maybe talk to a few people in the courtyard or whatever, or in the church, and then go off to the next church. And so he had no idea whether it was making any difference or not, right? And for me, and that's what I shared with my uncle, was that, look, we're just vessels. We're not doing the work anyway. It's God working through us, right? And if we can remember that, we don't have to be concerned about our ego getting in the way. We just recognize that if something good came out of it, it was God's doing, not mine, right? Left to my own devices, God only knows what I want to do, right? So this was such a powerful experience. And this was preceded by an experience I had with my wife. My wife, I always share the story that my wife's sister married extremely well, generational wealth, right? And they're wonderful people, and I've talked about them before. So she married extremely well. My wife, not so much. But Kate got to go to Hawaii a couple of weeks ago and spend a week in their home in Hawaii with her sister and one of her sister's friends. And Kate was having quite a bit of trouble with her swallowing issue, and she was having a hard time eating meals. And her sister and the friend that was with them kind of noticed that maybe Kate was a little frustrated with it, and of course they, as we all like to do, they want to help, and they're making all kinds of different suggestions of what she can try and this and that, and she just didn't really want to hear it. She just wanted to get through the day, right, and relax. So she got a little agitated, I guess, and the sister called me and asked if she was reading Kate right, if she was crazy, or if Kate was getting worse. And I said, well, yeah, she's getting worse if you're talking about the throat issue. And she goes, yeah. I said, okay, yeah, it's not gotten better, and it's probably not going to get better. It's that kind of thing. We always hold out for miracles, right? God does miracles all the time, and Kate has been given miracles numerous times in her health. So we always hold out positive thoughts for the healing. However, the interesting thing was that as I picked up Kate at the airport and we're driving home, I asked Kate what her favorite memory of her trip was. Now, when I was talking to her sister, I ended the conversation with, what Kate really wants to have with you on this vacation is some sister time, just you and her. And she goes, "Oh yeah, we'll do that." I said, "Okay, great. That's wonderful." So Kate as we're driving home, I asked Kate what her most favorite memory of the trip was. And she said it was the fact that my sister and I went down to the beach and just spent about 3 hours together, just talking and laying in the sun and just being together. And she said, that is my favorite memory. And I said, well, I knew it would be because you talked about how that was what you really wanted, right? So I shared with her that I had talked with her sister and that I'd made the suggestion that maybe if she could get some alone time with Kate, that would be really special. So I admitted that I, kind of set it up, but and that it made me feel good that I got to be a part of helping make that happen for her because it was important to Kate. And what's important to Kate is important to me, as it should be, right? Mm-hmm. So I suggested to Kate that she give her sister a call and tell her what that meant to her. She goes, "Oh, I don't know if I can do that." I said, "Oh, why not?" She goes, "Well, I don't know. It just seems really hard." I said, "No, you just say, I want you to know how much it meant to me that we spent time on the beach together." She goes, "Okay." And Kate is pretty good when I suggest something like that to take the action because she knows it's for the right reason, right? So she got on the phone, called her sister, and said, "Sis, I just wanted to thank you for the time in Hawaii. It was a wonderful vacation, and I just want you to know how much it meant to me that you and I spent time on the beach together," right? And her sister's response, I didn't get to hear it, but I'm sure it was, "Yeah, you're welcome," and it was great, right? Yeah, whatever. Kate got off the phone and she goes, "Oh, that was really hard." And it brought me back to the beginning of my journey, right? Of going out and risking saying something to somebody. Now, you come from a family that sharing love with each other was real easy and everybody does it. At least it seems that way, right?
It seems that way.
Seems that way. But not every family's that way, which is one of the reasons I enjoy your family so much, right? But
the majority of us.
Yeah, well, every family's got some stuff, right? Ain't none of us got away pure. But, in my family, we weren't ones for saying I love you. It didn't come from our parents that much. And they would hug and kiss each other, which was a good thing for us to experience as children. But it wasn't a huggy, kissy kind of family, right? We never did much of that. And we didn't really express I love you to each other very much. So I understood that with Kate. I understood how hard it felt for her to just tell her sister, "God, I really enjoyed that." That to me is intimacy, right? When you can express your feelings to a person without fear of retribution or condemnation or shame or any of the things that we all build crazy stories in our head, right? And sometimes you get those from people, right? If you share with the wrong person. It's like asking somebody out for a date. How hard that is, because it's such, what if they don't like it? What if all those things we go through. So hearing Kate talk about how hard it was for her to tell her sister that she really enjoyed that time together comes from an introvert, right? Kate's sister is very outgoing, very demonstrative. She was an actress. She was a singer. She was the life of the party. And so Kate just shrunk more and more and more into the woodwork, if you will, and just, kind of disappeared. And, when you get used to doing that, it becomes your comfort zone, right? And so Kate has been working on that ever since of being somebody that matters, right? That her existence is important, which is what I do my best to support every day, right? But it's a self journey. Nobody can take it for us, right? If
Right.
you have those feelings of quiet desperation, if you don't understand how valuable you are and how much difference you can make in the world, you belong here. This is where you need to be, because we'll remind you that you're a child of God, right? You've got that spark of Him right inside you, that creative force that's just waiting for you to use for good, right? To help God's children, right? And you can't help somebody else if you're sinking.
Very true.
Like that old saying about when you get on an airplane, right? The first thing they tell you is they drop down the oxygen mask and they explain to you, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, and then put them on your family or neighbors or whatever, and then put it on others, right? Because if you don't save yourself, you can't help anybody else. So it's our responsibility, in my opinion, and I'm just a cashier at Best Buy, so what the hell do I know? But it's I love self-deprecating humor. It's important that we take care of ourselves, that we get that understanding that we are God's children, and that we have not only the grace to learn these steps and to develop that self-esteem that is so important. But once you gain that, that's only half of the grace, right? That doesn't happen without God's grace, first of all, right? It's God kind of shaking us up and going, wait a minute, what are you thinking? You're my son, you're my daughter, right? Wake up, you're in a fog, you don't know it, right? And with His grace, that popping sound will happen where your head pulls out of the posterior, and you get to see that there are other people around in the world. Yeah, I know. Isn't that fun? There are other people in the world that are suffering maybe even more than you.
Right.
And when you get clear about that, the pain you go through, the suffering you experience, becomes much lighter, and the duration becomes much shorter, right? I share all the time that I'm a feel-good junkie. I like everything that makes me feel good, right? And I'm and I don't like suffering, so I'm into short-term suffering. Why suffer for a whole day when you can suffer for 5 minutes, right? The beatings, I used to beat myself up for weeks over something I did wrong, right? Now I can cut it down to just a few minutes, because I don't want to waste a whole day being cruel to myself or anybody else, right? So the more I practice that, the more I practice paying attention to what I'm saying and what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. It sounds like a lot of work in the beginning, doesn't it? But it isn't. It just feels like it in the beginning. And like everything else we've learned in life, it's a process, right? It's like learning how to ride a bike. Not many of us got on the bike the very first time and pedaled right on down the street without wobbling and falling. I doubt if anybody did, right? But it's that way with everything. And even building a self-esteem is that way. Because at first it's going to be uncomfortable because you're so used to beating yourself up that saying kind things about yourself feels really unnatural. And it is. Because how many years have you been doing that, right? In my case, it would be 130. It was a long time. Actually, it was about 30 years, right? from being a little boy, maybe, who knows, right? 3 or 4 or 5 years old, I was probably already beating myself up. So let's say 25 years, right? 5 to 30. The beatings were just atrocious, right? And so starting to learn that it can be different and you can do it different and experience a different way of living wasn't easy. For one thing, we didn't have Facebook Power Hour meetings that I could attend and have people remind me who I was, right? Because I forgot. I forgot that I was a child of God. That for me, God is a loving entity. It's not a punishing God, right? I figured because I had broken probably almost every commandment in the Bible that, I was already done for. So why bother, right? Just go ahead and keep doing it. Whew. But what a pain that was, right? And so getting past all that made such a difference. But you have to be kind and gentle to yourself. I wasn't very good at that. I had to learn how to do that. So I had to pay attention to those moments when I would say god awful things to myself and go, wait a minute, time out. We're not doing that anymore. That was when I started to understand that there were two me's. There was the soul and there's the mind. The soul's the boss, or supposed to be. The mind is supposed to be the servant, right? So when I got that understanding, then I was able to start training the mind to do the job I wanted it to do. Just like you train a dog or a horse or even a baby, right? You don't let a baby just run wild and create all kinds of chaos. You have to show them how to become a healthy, happy human being, right? How to live within boundaries, because there are boundaries in life. You don't get to do whatever you want. You know what I'm saying, right? I hope.
Yes.
And so, we can do it the hard way, right? With the way we train our children or our horses or our dogs or whatever the case might be. But I remember, and why the whisper business is called the whisper business, reading books about the horse whisperer and the dog whisperer, watching, Cesar Millan on TV talk about how you can do it in a gentle way, in a loving way, in a kind way. Especially the horse whisperer. That was all about the really transferring that calm and peacefulness that the whisperer had into the horse. The horse could feel it. They could sense that calmness, right? And just bring that horse back into a state of calmness and being. And so that's what this work is all about, is that we all have to train our mind. And we've talked on the show a number of times about how in the world do you think you can get what you want to get in your life if your mind is working against you? Oh, you can't do that. What are you thinking? You're not, what do you think? You think you're a business tycoon? What are you thinking, right? What, you think you're going to date that person? That person's not going to be interested in you. What are you thinking? And we do those kinds of things to ourselves all the time. I used to think it was just me because, of course, everything was just about me, right? Back in the days. Then the more I started to open up and talk with people about these kinds of things, I got to see that everybody was that way. I thought it was just me, right? Did you have those kinds of experiences, Cheryl? Did you have
yes.
where you recognized that, oh my gosh, I'm not the only person that thinks this way?
Oh, I would talk myself out of things a lot.
A lot,
with
yeah.
the self-doubt.
Yeah, self-doubt, exactly right. How can you create what you want if you're fighting with that thing all the time? Right?
You can't.
You can't. So what we do is we set ourselves up for failure. I'm going to lose 50 pounds in the next 2 months and nothing's going to stop me. Until you go to that party and somebody has your favorite dessert out there. And you decide to have some. And then you beat yourself up for a month because you had that dessert. And after that dessert, you decide, well, hell, I screwed up my diet. I might as well just go ahead and have a great time and enjoy myself, right? Where'd that 50-pound loss go? Right?
It's a gain.
Yeah. And you beat yourself up even more, which makes it even harder to try again, right?
All right.
And that's the difference between people that succeed at whatever it is they set out to do and those of us that don't. And look, we've all quit at something or another many times over, right? We've all done that. But if we really want to succeed, the business tycoons who have, made an amazing fortune, done amazing things to change the world, all of those people, Edison, Rockefeller, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, all the tycoons, they all had this indefatigable amount of drive to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. And they were not going to let anything stop them. That's the difference. Now, there are different views about, hugely successful business people that most of them have stepped on a toe or two or done some unethical things to get to the level they got to. And that might or might not be true. It's not for me to judge. I don't know. But what I do know is that they had to have that drive to accomplish what it was they wanted to accomplish. Whether they went outside the lines or not, that's for them to deal with and for history to write, not me. I'm just talking about that drive, right? And all of us can have that if we can minimize the beatings, right? If we can stop that constant chatter that's telling us that we're losers and there's no way we can possibly do that. And it feels like an unbelievable mountain to ascend to reach the level that I'd like to reach. I don't think I can do it. That self-doubt you were mentioning, Cheryl, right?
Right.
So again, the reason for our power hour is to remind you that there isn't anyone stopping you from what you want to do except you or me or Cheryl, right? It's up to us to accomplish the things that we want to have. And I guarantee you, God isn't sitting there going, no, Cheryl, you can't have that. What are you thinking? Cheryl would say, God would say, Cheryl, go for it. Love to see you accomplish that, right?
All right.
Yeah, you're my daughter. I'd love to see you accomplish that, right? That's the way I see God anyway. What do I know? I'm a cashier at Best Buy, right? So that's what I wanted to share tonight, was really about recognizing another little thing about ourselves that's important to remember, is that we make a difference every single day. And if you think you don't, give me a call. Where's my phone number? Let me pull that up here for you guys. Give me a call. Let's talk. All right? I'll remind you of the things you do every single day that make a huge difference in the world. And if you can own one or two of those things, that I can mention 10 to almost anybody in about less than 5 minutes, just after talking to them for a minute or two, right? It's easy. When you're going through the growth process, if I were to ask you to list all of the things that's bad about you and all of the things that's good about you, the things that were bad would be 2 or 3 times the list of the things that were good. And I even have a quiz or a little survey that I give to people when I start working with them about where are you now? Because you can't figure out where you're going to go if you don't know where you're starting from, right? So we talk about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good of an employee are you? How good of a mother are you? How good of a friend are you? And get those comments from them as to how they view themselves today. And I had one customer who's almost across the line, everything was 0.
Mm,
As well, we got a lot of work to do, don't we? Right?
that's a lot.
How can you have any joy in life if all of your assets are depleted? Right? How can you attract the right person? How can you attract the right job or the right business or the right friends? How can you attract the kind of life you want if you think, like I did, that you are of no value? Right? And that's why I do this work, is because I've been there. I know what it feels like to feel absolutely useless, to think of yourself as so ugly that nobody would ever want to be with you, right? I felt that way.
So
Yeah.
did I
So
when I
did
was
you.
younger. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And have you seen people, I know you have seen people who have that understanding that they're good people and that they have that joyous sense about themselves, right? You've seen those people, I'm sure, because of the kind of people you hang around. You
Yes.
are that kind of person now more than you ever were, right?
Had to work at it.
Had to work at it. Exactly right. Did you have a support group around you that helped to guide you along that, or did you do it all on your own?
No support group.
Support group. Yeah.
Yes.
See, it's getting out of that quiet desperation consciousness, right? Where we just suffer in silence and we don't tell anybody because nobody is as flawed as we are. And oh my God, if they knew how flawed I was, right? And we all go through that. That's one of the real powerful things about our group here, is that you get to see us all as the person you are, right? That feeling that you've had, we all have had. There's not a person that's been on our show or that's in our chat room. By the way, if you're watching this on recording, welcome. I forgot to welcome all of you here as well. But you know, all of us have had that feeling that we're just hopeless. There's just no chance that we're gonna make anything out of our life. And here's Jose saying, cashiers have some sort of intelligence. I think you're in the wrong profession, Papa. Well, I appreciate that. But, it's been
I
interesting.
agree, Jose.
Huh?
I agree with Jose.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. It's been a really interesting process with this job because I don't want to be in a job. I want to just do my business, right? And that's what I'm working towards. And I firmly believe we're going to get there. But there have been so many opportunities for me to learn and grow and help others. I get to do it on a daily basis, hourly basis, right? Minute by minute sometimes. And some of the most amazing experiences I've had being there, right? Like the woman that was dealing with cancer and why did she share that with me? And she didn't even know why, right? I knew why, and I got to share that with her, how to handle that for herself, right? And those kinds of experiences that if I was back in the old days, I wouldn't even said hello to her. I'd have just taken her money, done the transaction, and pushed her along her way, right? So instead, I got to have an amazing experience that I'll carry the rest of my life. And just like my friend Stan here, she'll probably carry that along with her too, right? So we all get to have those kinds of experiences once we start recognizing that we're okay. Because if you don't think you're okay, you're not. And that's the only thing that determines that factor. If you think you're screwed up, guess what? Cheryl?
Others would think it also.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
that's
you
the way
are
you
screwed up
act.
if you think you are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
That's
And
what you
what
will
you put
portray.
out, huh?
That's what you will portray. I can't say
Yeah.
the word right,
Yep.
but the way you act is the way people will think that you are. And if you think you're screwed up, then you'll act like you're screwed up.
That's right. Exactly right. If you feel like you've got it together, at least somewhat, right? I mean, ain't none of us got it all nailed down, right?
No, but we can at least fake it good if we feel like we have it
Well,
together.
yeah, well, you can just enjoy being you, right?
Right.
When you get to where you feel comfortable within your own skin. Do you remember when that happened for you, Cheryl, or when you were aware of the fact that you were finally comfortable with who you were?
Um, Maybe about 20 years ago,
20 years ago.
25, 20,
So you
25
were
years ago.
15 about then, right?
Yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah, I like it.
But yeah, but it is an amazing feeling, isn't it?
It is.
And just as we talked about about the beginning of our show, it isn't based on longevity of life.
No,
No, it's God's grace, first of all, because nothing happens without His grace, right?
that's true.
And the willingness to open up and heal the inside, right? Because we all have things that we've done in our past that we're not proud of, right? We've all
Right.
done things that we look back and go, oh, geez, I can't believe I did that, right? And we don't recognize that that's just a learning thing. It's not, it's not the end of the world. The world kept on spinning, even though Cheryl made a mistake, right?
Right.
The world kept spinning, even though Dan was, drunk on his ass. And, I mean, it didn't matter if you learned the lesson from it. Most
Right.
of the time I didn't, right? I just kept on doing it until I finally said, okay, that's enough. I'm done. Right? But the difference in the way you get to live when you're comfortable in your own skin is amazing. And that's half. Again, we talked about how the grace that you received is half the joy and half the reward. The other half of the reward is helping other people achieve the same thing. Right?
Right.
When you can be comfortable no matter where you're at. I remember going to a party once a friend of mine put on, and I didn't know any of these people, none of them. And when I was living in that quiet desperation, being around people I didn't know was really uncomfortable. Can you relate to that, Cheryl? Did you ever have that kind of time?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've
Where,
gone to a lot of
don't, God,
places.
they might discover who I am.
I'd get there and be like, "Why am I here?"
Yeah. And, going and trying to talk to somebody and have no idea what to say or how to intermingle or anything was almost impossible, right? Well, as I grew into who Dan was to become, right? I went to this party a friend of mine put on, and she had friends that were from all different walks of life. So there was lawyers and scientists and all kinds of different people there. And I found myself carrying on conversations with almost everybody about what their career was. Because I would ask, what do you do? I learned, and it's now one of the things I'm known for is going to a party and getting everybody to talk. I'm kind of good at it, right? And it's fun because it's ice breaking, right? But even more than that is I get to learn a whole lot about a whole lot of people, which is really kind of neat, right? But at the end of the evening, I left and I had a nice time, and the people were very intelligent and very, very nice to communicate with, and we had nice conversations. And the next day, my friend called and said, my husband said that Dan has no idea how smart he is, does he? And she goes, no, Dan doesn't play with that, right? Dan's Dan. That's all it is. He said, well, I watched him all night, and he was carrying on conversations with people about topics that I don't know anything about, and I wouldn't even know how to carry on the conversation. And he was doing it very comfortably with regardless of what the issue was, whether it was science or law or whatever the case was. I could share in it, right? And I was honored that he saw it that way, and even more appreciative of the fact that because I wasn't thinking about how I was being received, right? What they were thinking of me. I was more interested in them and what they were doing and how they did it. And that showed me that I was growing in the way that I wanted to become, right? And that's a fun thing. It's a humbling thing and a good feeling inside yourself when you recognize that because you break out of that shell of quiet desperation and you start caring about other people more than yourself, you get to live a really rich life. Financially, maybe not, right? But money isn't, you don't get to take money with you when you leave here anyway, right?
Right.
So it's only good for certain things. But the joy you get to have by really getting to know your brothers and sisters in this world and really being able to make a difference in somebody's life. And, as you and I were talking earlier, we always end our show with a certain little saying that we use. And it's, to me, so powerful because that's what a smile is, right? It's a powerful thing that, you can melt the crankiest old geezer in the world with a smile, right?
That's true. You can just
Somebody
walk by a
having,
person and smile, and it changes their whole demeanor.
yes, yeah. And I know you like to smile a lot. I've seen you do it. I know that's a favorite thing of yours, right? Is to smile. Am I wrong?
When I'm not thinking about it, there are times when I'm not looking very happy and people tell me I'm like looking evil, but that's only when I'm in my own head.
Ah,
Otherwise, I do like to smile,
yeah.
especially when I walk by a person. If they don't have a smile on their face, I like to smile at them.
Good. And you and I were talking about that in our pregame, in our warm-up show, right? About how we can't really pay attention to somebody if we're in our head,
Right.
right? We have no idea what's going on around us because all we're doing is thinking about the past or the future. We're not in the moment, right?
Right.
One of the things that we preach a lot here on the Power Hour is that your power comes from being in the moment. Nothing is going on right now except for I'm talking to this whole audience out there, whoever is joining us, either on the recording or live. And I'm having a great conversation with a great lady, Cheryl. And that's all that's happening at this moment, right? That's what's real.
Right.
And so practicing staying real, staying in the moment, all you can do is smile because there's nothing to be frowning about, right? It's like,
Right.
oh, wow, what a great moment. And the more you smile, the more that becomes your habit. It becomes second nature, right? I mean, I just smile all the time. And I enjoy it. Makes me feel good. And I know it makes other people feel good. So, Cheryl, you were awesome tonight. Thank you for joining in. I hope
Thank
it wasn't too terribly uncomfortable for you.
Just a little, but it wasn't bad.
Oh, good. See? And as I mentioned last week when we were trying to get this going and we couldn't get the audio going for whatever reason, I wanted to acknowledge you just for being willing to step out of your comfort zone and do something different, right? I remember the first time I did this, right? I thought it was going to go on for an hour and I thought I had enough material to last an hour easy, right? And I lasted 10 minutes.
But it was a good start.
Yes, it was a start, right? Exactly right. You're never going to get to where you want to go if you don't put your foot on the pedal.
That's true.
Right? So, Jose, we got Jose's comment about the cashiers having some sort of intelligence. That's probably true, but I saw a rock that I think had maybe a little bit more. So we're going to end now. We're going to end with our favorite thing, which is Cheryl. If you were to see somebody today or tomorrow who doesn't have a smile, what would you do?
I'd give them one of mine
And why would you do that?
because it makes them feel good.
Yeah, and it's free, right? It doesn't
Exactly.
cost you anything, but it makes you feel good. It makes them feel good, and it makes for a little bit better world,
It
right?
does.
And if
Yes.
you got to smile at 100 people in a day, there's 100 people that spreads out even more, right? And if they're
Right.
smiling, guess what they're doing to other people? See, it's a ripple effect, right? So that's
Right.
why, don't discount what you do to make a difference in other people's day. You never know when you might get a text from a stand saying, "Remember what you did all those years ago? Thank you." So, for Cheryl, for all of the family, and everybody who is on the journey of self discovery and wanting to empower themselves in a positive way, thank you for being with us tonight. Have a great week, and remember that happiness is a choice. So is misery.
That's true.
Choose carefully. Good night, everybody. Thanks. We'll see you next week.
Good night.